welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Tonight, our journey carries us eastward, to where the land meets the sea in a long, slow embrace. We arrive at the edge of the Indian Ocean as the sun sinks into the water, turning the world to molten gold and then to indigo. Here, the air is different. It carries the taste of salt and faraway lands, the whisper of monsoon winds that have traveled oceans, the scent of cloves drying on rooftops. This is the Swahili coast, a place of dhows with Latin sails like crescent moons, of bustling stone ports where languages mingled like spices in a mortar. It's a coastline that has witnessed centuries of trade, of arrivals and departures, of stories carried on the wind. But if you step away from the harbour, away from the immediate clamour of the port, and into the narrow, shadowed alleys of islands like Lamu, Kilwa, or Zanzibar, you will find the true soul of this place. You will find the coral houses. These houses don't shout their presence, they whisper. They are not grand monuments to conquest or power, but quiet testaments to conversation, centuries-long dialogue between human need and the living world that surrounds them. The people who built them were more than just masons. They were translators. They understood the secret language of the reef, the poetry of the tide, the song of the wind. They knew that to build a house here was not to impose a rigid shape upon the earth, but to ask permission from the sea, and to borrow, with profound respect, its very bones. They listened to the environment and responded with ingenuity and grace. This wasn't about dominating nature, it was about living in harmony with it. These architects worked with Livingstone. Coral rag, harvested from the moon-exposed reef during low tide, formed the very foundation and walls of their homes. This stone, born of the ocean, held a memory of the waves. They mixed mortar that was just as alive, a unique blend of lime, sand, and sometimes even egg whites and crushed seashells, creating a plaster that could breathe and flex with the humid, shifting earth. This flexibility was key to the longevity of the structures. They carved intricate wind catchers into ceilings and designed open courtyards, turning entire houses into passive cooling instruments that played the monsoon winds for relief. These homes were ecosystems in themselves, cool, whispering, and fragrant with the memory of the ocean. Each element, from the thick walls to the shaded verandas, was a deliberate response to the climate. Over the next while, we're going to dive deep into this remarkable world. We will join the moonlit harvest of coral blocks from the sleeping reef, witnessing a tradition that connects the builders directly to the rhythm of the tides. We will learn the alchemy of creating a mortar that breathes, a skill passed down through generations. We will trace the invisible pathways of the breeze as it flows through ornately carved wooden screens and cunningly placed ceiling vents, revealing the genius of natural air conditioning. And finally, we will step across the threshold of a Lamu merchant's home, a beautifully preserved example of this architectural style. We will feel for ourselves the profound, sensual intelligence of a space designed not just for living, but for feeling deeply, peacefully alive. This is the story of the coral architects of the Swahili coast. It is a story not of domination, but of a delicate, brilliant harmony between humanity and the sea. It's a lesson in sustainable design that is more relevant today than ever. It teaches us that true strength often lies in flexibility and true beauty in a respectful dialogue with our environment. So, for the next few moments, let the sound of the distant waves be your guide. Breathe in the salt air and prepare to enter a world where every wall remembers it was once part of the sea, and every house sings perpetually a low, soft duet with the wind and the water. You are now under Baobab Skies. Thanks for joining us on this journey. If you find this story as fascinating as we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who appreciate the beauty of our world. Welcome to the Swahili coast, where history isn't just written in books, but is built into the very walls of its ancient cities. Today, we're diving deep into the foundations of this unique architecture, revealing a story that connects the sky, the sea, and the skilled hands of master builders. By the end of our journey, you'll understand that for these coral architects, building began not with a blueprint, but with a profound observation of the heavens. Their first tool was not a chisel, but an intricate understanding of celestial rhythm. And their first material was time itself. Here on the Swahili coast, the Indian Ocean isn't just a backdrop. It's a living, breathing partner in the dance of life and creation. It pulses against the land with the slow, massive heartbeat of the tides. To build with coral, the beautiful, skeletal remains of a living reef, one must first learn to converse with this pulse. The coral architects of old were, first and foremost, readers of the moon. Their craft was a symphony of patience, knowledge, and deep respect for the natural world. Imagine a quiet, dimly lit room inside a traditional Lamu house. The air is thick with the scent of salt and old wood. Here we find the master builder, an old man named Juma. His face, a roadmap of wisdom and experience. He is consulting his charts, but these are not made of paper. They are carefully incised tablets of whalebone, smoothed by the touch of countless hands through generations. On their surfaces are etched not numbers, but intricate patterns, a language of arcs and dots that map the sacred relationship between the moon S phases and the CS retreat. The entire community, from the youngest child to the eldest elder, awaits his word. You see, the harvesting of coral rag is not an everyday task. It is a monumental event, a ritual timed with the precision of a sacred ceremony, a moment when human endeavor aligns perfectly with the cosmos. Juma's weathered finger traces a specific pattern on the bone tablet. He is calculating the arrival of the Zemwi Lamajith, the water ghost. This is the lowest spring tide of the entire lunar cycle, a moment when the moon's gravitational pull is at its absolute strongest. During the Zimwi Lamaji, the ocean draws back its watery blanket, pulling away from the shore to expose the greatest, most hidden expanse of the coral reef. This extraordinary tide often arrives in the dead of night, under a sky filled with stars, adding to its mystique and power. And so, as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the land, the preparations for the harvest quietly begin. It is a race against time, guided by the silent, celestial clock. On the appointed afternoon, a quiet, focused bustle fills the air. There's no shouting, no chaotic rush. Instead, there's a palpable sense of purpose and shared understanding. Men gather long, sturdy poles of Makomafi wood, chosen for its tight grain and resistance to splitting under pressure. They meticulously shape wedges from the even denser Mahugu wood, their tools moving with practiced ease. Ropes, painstakingly braided from coconut fiber, are checked and rechecked for strength, their integrity crucial for the task ahead. The tools are laid out in neat rows. They are all made of wood. Iron is strictly forbidden for the harvest. Its harsh, metallic force would shatter the precious, porous coral block. Only the gentle, persistent persuasion of wood against stone is permitted, a testament to the builder's philosophy of working with nature, not against it. This is a serious, almost solemn preparation. The work is dangerous, and the window of opportunity is narrow, dictated by the vast, uncaring power of the moon and tide. As the sun dips below the horizon, it paints the whitewashed walls of the town in breathtaking shades of rose and amber. The men gather for a simple, nourishing meal, their conversation sparse but meaningful. The children, usually boisterous and full of energy, are hushed. their youthful intuition sensing the gravity of the coming hours. The women of the community are also busy, preparing bundles of torches made from resinous coconut husks, their flickering light essential to pierce the impending darkness of the night. Then, slowly, the moon begins to rise. It appears as a bright, cold coin in the deepening violet sky. It is nearly full, its gravitational command over the ocean now at its absolute peak. The stage is set. Juma steps out from the stone doorway of his house. He lifts his head, his gaze fixed on the luminous moon. He sniffs the air, tasting the salt and the subtle shift in humidity. He listens, his ears attuned to the soundscape of the coast. He hears the already receding whisper of the waves on the distant beach, a sound only a master like him could decipher. A slow, definitive nod is his only signal. The sea is walking away, he says, his voice barely above a murmur. Yet it carries the weight of authority and ancient knowledge. It is time. With his words, a silent procession begins to form. Figures move like shadows through the dark, narrow alleys of the town, their bare feet making soft sounds on the sandy ground. They carry their wooden tools and their coconut husk torches. Their destination, the now exposed shoreline. The great coral harvest is about to happen in that magical, suspended hour when the reef lies naked and dreaming under the starlight. For a brief, precious moment, this underwater world is accessible, awaiting the sea's inevitable, powerful return. The architects go not as conquerors, seeking to dominate the landscape. They go as grateful borrowers, as humble participants in a grand natural cycle, ready to work in the brief, sacred space granted to them by the moon's permission. This is more than construction. It is a collaboration with the universe itself. Imagine a world revealed only by the moon. Here on the Swahili coast, when the tide retreats, it unveils a secret kingdom. The beach, under the moon and stars, transforms into a realm of silver and black. The water pulls back, sometimes for hundreds of feet, exposing a landscape that is normally forbidden to human feet. The reef platform, it's a vast, glistening plain, pockmarked and ragged, made of ancient, petrified life. The air is thick, intoxicating, filled with the intense smells of salt, iodine, and seaweed left bare to the night air. This is the hour of the harvesters. They step onto this temporary land, their bare feet sensitive to every nuance of the surface. In the near darkness, they must read the reef by feel, like a language written in stone and water. Their steps are careful, deliberate, avoiding the fragile living coral that fringes the edges of the platform. They are not here for the living reef, but for a specific bounty, a gift from the deep past. The fossilized coral rag, they seek the Parites blocks, coral that has hardened over countless centuries into the perfect building stoner material that is incredibly strong yet porous, heavy yet manageable. This is a tradition passed down through generations, an intimate knowledge of the sea's rhythms. The harvest can only happen during the spring tides, when the moon's pull is strongest and the water recedes the furthest, granting them a precious window of a few hours. This is not a job for machines or brute force. It is a craft of patience, strength, and deep respect for the environment that sustains them. Look there, moving across the silvery flats. A group of men, silhouettes against the star-dusted sky and the shimmering water. Their movements are fluid, coordinated, a silent ballet of labor. They carry long, heavy poles of hardwood, the tools of their trade. At their head is Juma, an elder whose hands know this reef better than any map. He moves with a quiet confidence, his hands skimming the wet surface of the coral stone. Almost like a blind man reading Braille, he is searching for the subtle signs, the telltale fracture lines that indicate a large, buried block ready to be freed. he stops, his hand resting on a particular spot. He has found a promising seam, a natural weakness between a massive block and the reef bed it has been part of for millennia. He signals silently to the others. Two younger men approach, positioning their long hardwood lever. The polished tip of the wood finds a natural crevice, a point of leverage. Another man carefully places a mahugu wedge, a smaller piece of dense wood, into a hairline crack nearby. Notice what isn't happening. There is no loud hammering, no shattering of stone. The process is one of quiet persuasion. The men gather around the lever, their bodies tensing. Then, in unison, they use their collective weight, leaning slowly, steadily, applying a powerful, constant pressure. The only sounds are the soft sigh of their shared effort, the distant, gentle lap of water at the far edge of the tide, and maybe the lonely cry of a night bird echoing across the flats. It's a scene of immense tranquility, yet underneath it all, a powerful force is being exerted. Then it comes. A low, deep groan from the reef itself. It's a sound you feel more than you hear, a grinding, popping shudder that travels through the solid stone, up the wooden poles, and into the hands and shoulders of the men. It is the sound of the earth letting go of a bond that has held for centuries being broken. The block shifts, rising just an inch, but the separation has begun. This is a moment of profound intimacy and, in a way, a carefully controlled violence. They are breaking something ancient, but they are doing it with the skill of a surgeon. They work another lever into the newly created gap, then another. The pressure is reapplied, this time from multiple angles. Slowly, painstakingly, the block, about the size of a small chest, is coaxed from its ancient bed. It emerges pale and rough, dripping with saline water that seems to carry the scent of deep time itself. This single block represents a moment of triumph, the culmination of knowledge, teamwork, and immense physical effort. This is the critical knowledge that makes this practice so unique. They are not just quarrying random rubble. They are harvesting specific, tabular blocks that have a particular structure, destined to become the heart of the load-bearing walls in Swahili architecture. Each block is a piece of the sea's own memory, a complex lattice of tiny calcium carbonate cells that once housed living coral polyps. This isn't dead stone. You could almost say it's stone that is merely asleep, still holding the ocean's breath within a million microscopic chambers. This porosity is what makes it such a brilliant building material, allowing walls to breathe in the humid coastal climate. Let's just pause for a moment and take in this scene. We are standing on this vast, glistening platform under the full sweep of the Milky Way. The men are dark, moving shadows against a universe of stars. The air is cool and clean. The pop and groan of the separating stone feels like a primal conversation between humanity and the planet. This isn't mining in the industrial sense. It feels more like gathering a crop, a harvest that the moon and the sea have offered up for a short time. The men work with a reverence that comes from a deep understanding that this resource is both generous and finite. They know that to take too much, or to take carelessly, would be to destroy the very source of their livelihood. Each block, as it is freed, is handled with immense care, almost as one would handle a sleeping child. As the hours of the night wear on, the fruits of their labor begin to accumulate. On the higher sand, just above the tide line, a pile of these pale coral blocks grows. It stands as a testament to their hard, silent work. Each block represents a journey from the deep past of the reef to the future of a family's home, a new mosque, or a community building. These stones will carry the story of this night, of this tide, into the walls they will become. They are more than just building materials. They are chunks of history, solidified ocean, brought into the human world by the light of the moon. But the night and the tide wait for no one. As the men work, a subtle shift occurs in the rhythm of the sea. Juma, ever watchful, lifts his head and looks out towards the horizon. A faint, darker line has appeared where the sky meets the water. It's an almost imperceptible change, but to these men, it's a clear signal. The tide has reached its turn. The great lung of the ocean has finished exhaling and is now beginning to inhale. The water is starting to remember its domain. The silent, methodical harvest now becomes a race against time. The quiet reverence is now joined by a sense of urgency. The men must move the heavy, waterlogged blocks from the reef platform to the high sand before the sea reclaims its territory. The work doubles in intensity. They use smaller logs as rollers, their muscles straining to move the immense weight across the uneven ground. The quiet grunts of effort become more frequent. The water, which was a distant murmur, now seems to be drawing closer, its sound growing in volume. The first fingers of the returning tide begin to snake across the reef flat, filling the depressions and channels they had walked through just hours before. The silver plain begins to disappear, submerged once again under the advancing water. The men's bare feet are now sloshing through the shallows. The race is on. Leaving a block behind means it will be lost to the sea, perhaps forever, and all the effort to free it would be wasted. They cannot afford to lose a single one. Finally, with the water swirling round their ankles, the last block is hauled onto the safety of the beach. The men stand, breathing heavily, their bodies glistening with sweat and seawater under the fading moonlight. They look back at the reef platform, which is now almost completely submerged, the waves washing over the scars they left behind. In a few hours, when the sun rises, the reef will look as it always has, its secrets once again hidden beneath the waves. The only evidence of their nocturnal visit is the neat pile of pale stone on the sand, waiting to begin its new life on land. This is a cycle of give and take, a sustainable dance with nature that has been performed on this coast for centuries. It's a powerful reminder that some of the most valuable things are not taken by force, but received with wisdom, respect, and a deep understanding of the world's natural rhythms. A new sound enters the symphony of the night. It starts as a soft, gathering roar from the far edge of the darkness. It's not the sound of waves breaking on the shore, not yet. This is something deeper, a watery sigh, as if the ocean itself is reversing its breath. The tide has turned. The moon's silent permission, which allowed the reef to be exposed, is now being revoked. This awareness ripples through the harvesters. There is no panic, no chaos. Instead, a heightened, silent urgency takes hold. Juma, one of the elders, straightens his posture, his old back protesting the sudden movement. He scans the horizon, his experienced eyes tracing the dark line where sea meets sky. That line is thicker now, a band of deeper blackness, a shadow advancing towards them. He gives no shout, no verbal command. There's no need. He simply brings his hands together in a single, sharp clap. The thwack sound cuts through the quiet air, a clear, carrying signal. It is the only command needed, and everyone understands what it means. The race against the sea has begun. The work transforms instantly. The careful, patient prying of the coral blocks, the methodical search for the perfect pieces is over. Now, the focus shifts to coordinated extraction. The coral blocks, each one incredibly heavy, weighing as much as 2 men, must be moved from the exposed reef platform to the safety of the high beach before the water reclaims its territory. This is where hours, days, even years of preparation and passed down knowledge show their true worth. Teams of 2 and 3 men quickly slide thick, durable coconut fiber ropes beneath the loosened blocks. Using these ropes as slings, they begin the arduous process of walking the stone across the slippery, uneven surface of the reef. It's a rhythmic, heaving dance, a synchronized test of raw strength and perfect balance. One slip, one moment of miscommunication, and the block could be lost, or worse, a man could be injured. Further out, in the deeper channels that are now beginning to fill with the incoming tide, other men have a different strategy. They float the heavy blocks on small, sturdy rafts made of lashed mangrove logs. With long poles, they push off the seafloor, poling the rafts swiftly and expertly through the rising water, guiding their precious cargo toward the shore. The sea doesn't return as a monstrous wall of water. It's more subtle, a creeping insistence. At first, it fills the deepest pits and channels on the reef with a sudden, quiet rush. Then, it begins to sheet across the flat platform, an inch of water that seems to double the weight of everything it touches. The torchlight, which had been illuminating their work, now reflects off a spreading mirror of water, doubling the stars in the sky and turning the workers into shimmering, moving silhouettes against the night. The scene is both beautiful and tense, a portrait of human effort against the inevitable power of nature. The final few blocks become a desperate struggle. The water is now at their ankles, then swirling around their knees. The increased buoyancy is a double-edged sword. It helps those using the rafts, making the blocks slightly easier to manage. But for the men on foot, the footing becomes treacherous. The reef, already slick with algae, is now a hidden trap beneath the dark water. The distinctive pop of the last block being freed from the reef is almost drowned out by the sound of the swirling, rushing water all around them. This last block isn't walked to shore. It's half carried, half floated in a frantic scramble. The men gasp with effort, their muscles burning with the combined strain of the weight and the sting of the salt water. Their last raft scrapes onto the sand of the beach just as the first real wave, a gentle forerunner of the returning oceans, might wash us over the very spot where they had been harvesting just minutes before. The timing is perfect, down to the second. The men collapse onto the soft sand, their chests heaving, lungs burning, as they look back at the reef. It's now completely submerged under a foot of swirling, moonlit water. The platform where they stood has vanished, returned to the sea. It is done. The harvest is complete. On the high beach, safe from the tide, lies their prize, a small city's worth of pale, rugged coral blocks, glistening wetly in the moonlight. They seem to breathe in the cool night air, exhaling the damp, mineral scent of the deep reef. Juma walks slowly among them, his silhouette dark against the shimmering sea. He places a hand on each block, a quiet, personal gesture. Perhaps he is thanking them, or perhaps he is checking their vitality, feeling the life they once held. Each block is a prisoner of the land, now wrested from its home. But it will carry its sea memory into the very walls of the houses that will be built, a permanent connection to the ocean. Let's pause for a moment and just listen. Listen to the victorious sound of the sea, reclaiming its territory. The rhythmic wash of the waves, the quiet gurgle as the water fills every crevice of the reef. The danger has passed. The race has been won. The coral rag, the living stone, now sleeps on the sand. It's no longer part of the living, breathing reef, but it is still imbued with its essence, its spirit. The architects of the coast have successfully negotiated with the moon and the ocean. They have paid for their materials not with money, but with sweat, with precise timing, and with a deep, abiding respect for the power they contend with. This gathering of the living stone is the first, and perhaps the most profound, act of building. The work is far from over. Tomorrow, the long, patient process of letting the blocks dry and cure will begin. It's a process that will take an entire year. A full cycle of seasons must pass before they are ready to be laid. to form the foundations and walls of a new home. But for tonight, there is no thought of tomorrow. For tonight, there is only the soothing sound of the restored sea, the vast, star-filled sky, and the deep, bone-weary fatigue of a task completed in perfect harmony with the cosmos, while the massive coral blocks sleep and cure on the sun-drenched beaches, a full year passing as they transform from wet sea stone to dry building bone. A different kind of alchemy is just beginning. This transformation takes place not on the open shore, but in the quiet, brackish tidal flats at the very edge of the mangrove forests. Here, far from the town's lively bustle, the coral architects take what seems unusable, the rubble, the small broken fragments, the ancient, brittle coral deemed too fragile for walls, and begin to create the very breath that will bind those walls together. This is the ancient, elemental craft of making lime. The kiln is not what you might imagine, not some grand, towering structure of brick and mortar. Instead, it is a humble, carefully built mound of earth and clay, its shape organic, almost primal, like a pregnant belly rising from the coastal soil. At its very heart lies a firing chamber, meticulously lined with the same coral rubble it is destined to transform. The preparation for this fiery birth begins days, sometimes weeks, beforehand. Boys and old men fan out into the mangroves, their task to gather fuel, but not just any wood will do. They seek the dense, slow-burning timber of the mangrove itself. This wood is a special gift from the ecosystem, burning with an intense, steady heat and being rich in the exact minerals needed for the process. It is yet another act of borrowing, of a deep and respectful partnership with the coastal world. Overseeing this entire operation is the master of the kiln, a Fundai Watchaka. Let's call him Bakari, a man whose hands are permanently dusted a ghostly white, a testament to a lifetime spent in service to this craft. He directs the loading of the kiln with a quiet authority that comes from generations of inherited knowledge. The process is a careful layering, a rhythmic construction, a layer of coral rubble, then a layer of dense mangrove wood, another layer of coral, another of wood, repeated until the earthen belly is full. Once loaded, the kiln is sealed shut with wet clay, plastered over until it is airtight, leaving only a small chimney at its peak and a few carefully placed air vents at its base. Then, with a prayer whispered to the spirits of the sea and the fire is lit. This is not a process to be rushed. It is a slow, patient, watchful vigil that will last for 5 days and 5 nights. The kiln will burn without interruption, a constant, glowing heart in the darkness of the tidal flats. Bakari sleeps in a small hut nearby, but his sleep is light, punctuated by a deep, instinctual connection to the fire he commands. He wakes throughout the night, not to an alarm, but to an inner clock, timed to the kiln's rhythm. He steps out into the humid, salty air to check the color of the smoke billowing from the chimney. It must be a clean, pure, blue-white, a sign of perfect combustion. He adjusts the air vents with a long pole, feeding or starving the fire of oxygen. Controlling its temperature with the touch of an artist, he places a hand near the clay dome, not touching, but feeling the immense heat radiating from within. To Bakari, the kiln is not an inanimate object, it is a living entity. Its breath must be regulated. Its fiery digestion of stone and wood must be carefully, lovingly managed. What is happening inside that sealed, glowing mound is a kind of magic, a transformation that is breathtaking in its simplicity, yet profound in its consequences. The intense, sustained heat, reaching over 900 degrees Celsius, begins to work on the coral rubble. This heat is the catalyst that drives the carbon dioxide out from the calcium carbonate of the coral skeletons. What is left behind is something new, something elemental, calcium oxide, or, as it's more commonly known, quicklime. It is a process of chemical reduction, of purification by fire. The coral, which began its life as the skeleton of a tiny sea creature, then became a hard stone cut from the reef, now undergoes its final metamorphosis. It becomes a volatile, hungry, brilliant white powder, a substance brimming with potential energy. The 5 days and nights pass. The fire consumes the last of the mangrove wood, and the intense glow of the kiln begins to fade. The vigil is over, but the patience is not. The kiln is left to cool for 2 more full days. To open it too soon would be disastrous. The sudden rush of cool air could crack the precious contents, or, worse, the still hot quicklime could react explosively with the moisture in the air. Finally, on the 7th day, a small crowd gathers. With a sense of ceremony, Bakari takes a heavy mallet and breaks the hard-baked clay seal. A wave of dry, mineral-scented heat washes over them. He carefully removes the clay shards, revealing the treasure within. Instead of the dull grey rubble that was loaded a week ago, the heart of the kiln holds a pile of brilliant, white, lumpy quicklime. It is still hot to the touch, radiating a dry, alien heat. It looks fragile, almost ethereal. To the Swahili people, this is not just a building material, not merely a chemical compound. This is Roho Yachaka, the spirit of the plaster. They see it as the sea stone reborn through fire. Its very essence refined and concentrated into a powdery potential, a spirit that is now dormant, waiting to be awakened by the touch of water. This hungry spirit is the first and most vital ingredient in the special mortar that allows Swahili buildings to breathe. But its power is also a danger. This quicklime is caustic, thirsty, and if mishandled, it can burn skin and flesh. Its spirit is wild and untamed. Before it can be used to bind the walls of a home, before it can become the flexible, living mortar, this hungry spirit must be tamed. And that taming, that careful slaking with water, is the next delicate ritual in this ancient coastal story. The journey of a Swahili stone house begins not with stone, but with fire and water, with a substance so volatile it cannot yet touch the very blocks it's destined to join. This is quicklime, born from the intense heat of the kiln, a powder full of raw, untamed energy. It's too caustic, too aggressive for the patient coral stone. It must first be transformed, or slaked. The process is almost ceremonial. In a wide, shallow pit, carefully lined with waterproofed clay to contain the magic, the quicklime is poured. Then, with the deliberate care of a priest making a libation, seawater is added. Not fresh water, but the mineral-rich water of the Indian Ocean. The reaction is immediate and violent. The mixture erupts, hissing and steaming, boiling like a witch's cauldron. The heat of this transformation is so intense you can feel it on your face from a safe distance. Bakari, the lime master, stands back, showing a deep respect for this elemental fury. He is witnessing the lime dying to its fiery state and being reborn as something new, a wet, pliable, putty-like paste. This is slaked lime, or lime putty, but its journey is far from over. This reborn lime is now laid to rest. It will be stored in a covered pit, left to mature for months, sometimes even years. Time is the secret ingredient here. The longer the lime putty ages, the finer, more plastic, and more breathable it becomes. It softens, develops character, and prepares itself for the great work ahead. This patient waiting game transforms a simple paste into the soul of the building. When the master builder, Juma, is ready to begin the mortar work, he calls for the aged lime putty. But this is just the base, the foundation of the recipe. Now, the true alchemy begins. A process guarded by a master mixer, often an elder woman whose knowledge of textures and materials is legendary. Her name is by Usher, and her hands hold generations of wisdom. She brings the other components to a clean, stone mixing floor, ready to conjure the perfect blend. First, there is sand, but this is not the soft sand of the beach. It is coarse, sharp river sand, meticulously sieved to remove any fine silt. Its gritty, angular edges are crucial. They will lock together within the mix, giving the final mortar its incredible strength and structure. Then, from a rustic calabash by Asha adds one of the coast's most precious secrets, crushed seashells. They are not ground into a fine dust, but broken into small, sharp fragments. These are the ears of the wall, she might say, her voice a soft whisper. They let it hear the wind, let the damp breath in and out. These shell fragments create microporosity, a network of tiny, invisible channels that allow the finished wall to breathe, preventing moisture from becoming trapped. Next comes the ingredient that gives the mortar its resilience, its ability to bend without breaking. Egg whites. Dozens, sometimes hundreds, of eggs from free-ranging coastal chickens are carefully separated. The yolks are set aside for the evening meal. It is the clear, viscous whites that are poured into the growing mixture. This is the tendon, by Asha explains, her hands already working the paste. It gives the mortar stretch. It lets the house sway with the monsoon winds without breaking its bones. This natural polymer provides an incredible elasticity that modern cement simply cannot replicate. Depending on the specific needs of the building, other ingredients might be introduced. A handful of chopped coconut husk fibers for extra tensile strength, acting like a natural rebar. Or perhaps a little camel milk, its fats and proteins helping to make the mortar more workable and smooth. Each addition is a carefully considered choice, a response to the climate, the stone, and the intended longevity of the structure. Once all the ingredients are combined, the real work starts. The mixture is not stirred, it is beaten. Young apprentices, strong and full of energy, take turns with heavy wooden paddles. They fold and slap the mortar over and over, a rhythmic, percussive sound echoing through the construction site. This isn't just mixing. It's a process of conditioning, of forcing the molecules to align and bond. For hours, they work under by Usher's watchful eye until the mortar reaches a very specific, almost sacred consistency. Finally, by Usher steps forward to perform the test. She plunges her thumb deep into the thick, grey paste. She watches the impression it leaves. It must be clean and hold its shape perfectly. Then she slowly tilts her hand. The material must be reluctant to move, beginning to flow only slowly, deliberately. It must remember its shape, but forgive a tremor, she declares with a nod of satisfaction. It is ready. This is not a simple building material. It is a complex, living compound, perfected over centuries. This incredible mortar is not a glue meant to weld stones together in a rigid grip. It is a living, breathing intermediary. It is designed to be the flexible joint, the forgiving lung between the unyielding coral blocks. It understands the nature of its environment. It knows that the ground swells with the rainy season's dampness, that the powerful monsoon winds will push against the walls, and that the coral itself expands and contracts with the daily shifts in humidity. The mortar's job is to accommodate all of this movement. It must breathe with the seasons, flex with the wind, and yield to the subtle shifts of the earth. Unlike modern cement, which creates a rigid, impermeable barrier, this lime mortar is softer than the stone it joins. This is intentional. If the building settles or comes under stress, it is the mortar that will give way first, developing fine cracks that can be easily repaired. The precious, hand-carved coral blocks remain unharmed. The mortar acts as a sacrificial element, protecting the more valuable parts of the structure. It is a philosophy of construction built on wisdom and forgiveness. ensuring the building can live and be maintained for hundreds of years. This breathing wall, this flexible skeleton, is the genius of Swahili architecture, a testament to a deep understanding of nature, materials, and time itself. With the breathing mortar mixed and the cured coral blocks waiting, the act of building can truly begin. The site has been prepared, the earth cleared, tamped, and often lined with a bed of smaller stones for drainage. The foundation trench is open, a shallow scar in the earth that will become the very root of the house. Juma, the master builder, the fundi, oversees the laying of the first course. He does so with the solemnity of a man beginning a prayer. This foundation layer is the most critical of all. It must be perfectly level, because every single block that comes after will reference this plane. It must be strong, because it carries the weight of everything above. And, most importantly, it must be flexible, because it is in direct conversation with the damp, shifting earth below. From the recent harvest of coral, Juma selects the largest, flattest blocks. An apprentice brings him a wooden trough filled with the grey, shell-speckled mortar. Using a simple wooden trowel, Juma spreads a thick bed of it much thicker than you'd see in modern bricklaying. This is completely intentional. The joint here might be 2 fingers wide. It isn't a thin, rigid line of adhesion, but a soft, forgiving cushion. The first block is lowered into place with a soft, final thud. Juma checks its alignment with a water leveler, simple, elegant wooden trough filled with water. He taps it gently with the handle of his trowel, settling it perfectly into the mortar bed. He's not looking for a vacuum seal. He's looking for stable contact. The mortar oozes out from the sides, and he just leaves it there. This squeeze out won't be neatly trimmed away like it would be in modern construction. It will harden into a natural, rounded fillet, becoming part of the wall's organic, living texture. Block by block, the first course starts to take shape. The builders don't rush. They fit the irregular coral blocks together like a 3-dimensional puzzle, using smaller stones and more mortar to fill any gaps. The wall they create isn't sleek or machined. It's rugged, it's textured, it's alive with the variation of the natural stone. And this isn't a flaw, it's a feature. This uneven surface creates beautiful shadows and plays with the light. And functionally, the texture helps to dissipate the force of wind and rain. As they work, the builders are constantly aware of the mortar's needs. It can't be allowed to dry too quickly in the hot coastal sun, so they cover sections of the new wall with damp palm fronds. They prefer to work in the cooler morning hours. The special mortar, with its egg whites and carefully prepared consistency, remains workable and forgiving for a long time. Let's just pause here for a moment. At the end of the first day, a single uneven line of pale coral stone emerges from the earth. It looks humble, almost like the bones of some large sea creature washed ashore. But in that line is the entire philosophy of the Swahili coral architects. The thick, breathing joints, the irregular, resilient blocks, the deep, stable foundation. This wall is not meant to defy nature. It is designed to move with nature, to absorb settlement in the earth, to flex in the wind, and to wick moisture up from the ground and release it as coolness into the air. This first course is the handshake between the house and the land. The agreement is written in coral and lime. I will stand upon you, but I will listen to you. I will draw strength from you, but I will yield to your movements. The house has now begun its long conversation with the earth. Soon it will learn to speak with the wind. The walls rise, course by patient course, over months. You can see the texture of the coral rag, the way the light plays on its uneven surface. Each block is placed with intention, bonded with a mortar of lime and sand. It's a process of slow, deliberate creation. But the true genius of the Swahili coral house isn't fully revealed just by looking at its walls. It's not until the roof is on and the spaces are finally enclosed that you can begin to understand the architect's real masterpiece. Because, for the Swahili master builder, a house is never just a shelter from the elements. It's not a fortress to keep the world out. Instead, it's a sophisticated, living instrument for conducting the elements. And its primary conductor is the wind. Long before the first block was ever laid, a builder like Juma would have spent seasons on this very spot, just observing. He wasn't just an architect in our modern sense. He was a climatologist of instinct, a student of the sky and the sea. He knew the two great breaths of the year that define life on this coast. First, there is the Kaskazi. This is the steady, strong northeast monsoon that blows from December to March. It's a reliable friend, bringing drier air and, historically, the sailing dhows from Arabia and Persia, laden with goods and ideas. The Kaskazi is a season of connection, of trade, of clear skies. Then there is the Kusi. This is the southeast monsoon, blowing from April to October. It's a different beast often, less predictable, sometimes gusty, bringing with it the humidity and the rains that nourish the land. An ordinary builder might see these powerful winds as enemies to be blocked, as forces to build walls against, but Juma, the Swahili architect, saw them differently. He saw them as resources to be harvested. He saw them as natural engines of comfort, a free, invisible air conditioning system provided by nature itself. And so, his design began not with a floor plan, but with orientation. You'll notice that a traditional Swahili house almost never sits square to the 4 points of the compass. It's always rotated, angled with deliberate, calculated precision. The main facade, the primary openings, the most important rooms, they are all positioned to face the direction of the prevailing Kaskazi breeze. The house isn't turning its back on the wind, it's presenting its open hand, ready to welcome the wind's generosity. This single decision, made before any digging begins, sets the stage for everything that follows. It's the first note in a symphony of climate-responsive design, an ancient wisdom that modern architecture is only now beginning to rediscover. But simply pointing a house towards the wind is not enough. Channeling a force of nature is far more complex than just making a window. The Swahili architect had to think in 3 dimensions. He had to understand pressure and vacuum, thermal mass and convection. He was an intuitive physicist, choreographing an invisible dance of air. The entire house was conceived as a sequence of spaces that would act like a flute, designed to be played by the wind. It all starts at the entrance. The magnificent, carved wooden door is the most famous feature of a Swahili house, a symbol of the owner's wealth and status. But its setting, within a deep, shaded recess called the Daka, is not just for grandeur. The Daka acts as a wind trap. As the monsoon breeze flows past the front of the house, this recessed porch creates a zone of high pressure. The breeze is captured, compressed slightly, and poised to begin its journey through the building. It's the gathering of the orchestra before the first note is played. Once you step beyond that iconic door, you realize the interior is not just a collection of boxy, isolated rooms. It's a carefully choreographed journey for the air. The corridors that lead from the entrance are not uniform in width. They are often designed to narrow slightly as they move deeper into the house. This isn't a mistake. It's a deliberate application of what scientists now call the Venturi effect. By squeezing the air through a narrower channel, its velocity increases. The gentle breeze captured at the door is transformed into a more purposeful, cooling current, accelerating as it moves through the home's arteries. This clever design ensures that the cooling effect is not just felt at the entrance, but is actively propelled throughout the living spaces. It's a brilliant, simple mechanism that turns the entire layout of the house into an active part of the ventilation system. The architect is not just building walls. He's sculpting air currents, shaping the very atmosphere within the home. And then we come to the heart of the house, the open courtyard, or uwanja. In many architectural traditions, a courtyard is primarily a source of light and a private outdoor space. In the Swahili house, it is so much more. The uwanja is the engine room of the entire ventilation system. It's a thermal chimney. Throughout the day, the sun beats down into this central open space, warming the air within it. As we all know from basic physics, warm air rises. As this sun-warmed air in the courtyard ascends and escapes, it creates a low-pressure zone at the base of the courtyard, a subtle vacuum. This vacuum is the critical, final piece of the puzzle. It doesn't just sit there passively. It actively pulls cooler air from the sea-facing rooms, through the corridors, and across the entire floor, planned to replace the air that has risen. This creates a continuous, gentle, and self-sustaining cycle of airflow. The cool breeze brought in by the kaskazi from the front of the house is drawn through the living areas, and the hot, stale air is exhausted vertically through the courtyard. It is a perfect, silent, natural engine for comfort. Every single element of the design contributes to this invisible engineering. The placement of internal walls is not random. They are positioned to guide and direct the river of air, not to block it. The height of the ceilings, often impressively tall, allows the hottest air to stratify high above the occupants, while the cooler, denser air remains at living level. The location of subsequent doors, the use of latticework screens instead of solid walls in certain areas, all of these are deliberate decisions in this grand scheme of ventilation. The goal is to create a constant, gentle flow that moves through every important space. This river of air does more than just lower the temperature. It carries away the oppressive humidity that can make coastal climates so uncomfortable. It cools the skin through evaporation. And with it, it carries away the stifling heat of the tropical day. What is truly remarkable is that this entire system works without a single moving part, without consuming a single watt of electricity. It is the pinnacle of passive design. The house is not fighting against the climate. It is in a deep and intelligent partnership with it. The architect has taken the monsoon, a powerful seasonal force, and transformed it into a permanent, invisible servant of comfort. It's a profound lesson in how to live in harmony with the environment, not in opposition to it. This is the hidden genius of the Swahili coral house, a building that doesn't just stand, but breathes. As the coral walls of a Swahili house rose to their full height, a fascinating transformation took place. The abstract ideas of managing the fierce coastal climate became solid, tangible features carved directly into the architecture. The first and most visible of these was external, the baraza. This wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was an integral part of the building's fakadia-long, continuous stone bench built right into the front wall, nestled in the deep shade cast by the overhanging roof. Visually, the baraza was an invitation. It signaled a home that was open to the community, a place for social interaction. In the evenings, you would find the men of the house and their neighbors gathered here, their voices a low murmur against the backdrop of the setting sun. They would share news, conduct business, and simply enjoy the end of the day. It was the liminal space between the private world of the home and the public life of the street. But the baraza was also a brilliant climatic device, a silent, hard-working servant of comfort. Its design was no accident. Positioned low to the ground and shielded from the sun's glare, it was perfectly placed to intercept the very first, gentlest tendrils of the sea breeze. This cool air, denser and heavier, hugs the ground as it moves inland. Long before this breeze even reached the main entrance of the house, the men sitting on the baraza would feel its cool kiss on their ankles. It was the house's first taste of coolness, a preview of the comfort that lay within. This simple stone bench was the first line of defense against the tropical heat, a masterpiece of social and environmental engineering combined. Then you have the openings, the doors and windows. In Swahili architecture, these were never just simple holes punched in a wall. They were elaborate, multifunctional, and deeply symbolic. Take the main door, often a magnificent creation of carved mango or teak wood, studded with brass bosses. It was a statement of the family's status and history. But this massive door wasn't just flush with the wall. It was set within a deep recess, creating a small transitional space, almost a room in itself, called the daka. This recess provided an extra layer of shade and shelter, a pause before one entered the inner sanctum of the home. The windows were perhaps even more ingenious. They were rarely just glassless openings letting in the harsh light and prying eyes. Instead, they were fitted with mashrabiyah. These are intricately latticed wooden screens, beautiful works of art in their own right. The geometric patterns carved into the wood are stunning, but their function is just as impressive. The mashrabiyah screens served multiple crucial purposes simultaneously. First, privacy. They allowed the inhabitants, particularly the women of the household, to look out onto the street without being seen themselves. It was a veil for the house, maintaining modesty and separation. Second, security. The sturdy wooden lattice was a barrier against intruders, more secure than an open window. Third, and perhaps most importantly for climate control, the mashrabiyah masterfully managed sunlight. They broke the direct, harsh glare of the tropical sun into 1,000 tiny beams, scattering it and diffusing it. This filled the room with a soft, dappled, ambient light, preventing the intense heat gain that comes with direct sun exposure. The patterns of light and shadow cast by the mashrabiyah would slowly shift across the floor and walls throughout the day, marking the passage of time in a beautiful, silent dance. And crucially, these screens did the same thing with the wind. An open window might let in a strong, unwelcome draft. The mashrabiyah, however, intercepted the incoming breeze and broke it into dozens of smaller, gentler streams of air. It diffused the airflow, spreading it more evenly and effectively throughout the room. This created a gentle, pervasive coolness, a constant, subtle circulation of air rather than a single, gusty blast. It was a sophisticated way to achieve ventilation without sacrificing comfort or privacy. Once you step through that grand, recessed doorway, you find that the interior architecture continues this silent, brilliant work of climate management. The layout of a traditional Swahili house is a masterclass in promoting airflow. Rooms were often arranged in a linear fashion, one behind the other, leading away from the street towards a central open-air courtyard. This layout, combined with the strategic placement of doors and windows, created a natural wind tunnel. The sea breeze, having been filtered and gentled by the mashrabiyah at the front of the house, would be drawn through the long, relatively narrow rooms, pushing the warmer, stale air out into the open courtyard at the back. This constant cross-ventilation was the house's respiratory system, ensuring a steady flow of fresh, cool air throughout the day. But it wasn't just the layout, it was the volume. Swahili houses were built with incredibly high ceilings. It wasn't uncommon for them to soar to 12 or even 15 feet. This wasn't just for grandeur, though it certainly added to the sense of space and elegance. This vertical space was a key part of the cooling strategy. We all know that hot air rises. By creating a large volume of air within each room, the warmest air would naturally collect far up, high above the heads of the inhabitants. This created a thermal stratification within the room. The cooler, denser air, the air that people actually lived and breathed in, would remain settled in the lower part of the room, near the floor. The high ceilings acted as a buffer, a reservoir for heat, keeping the living space comfortable. And then there are the floors themselves, the very foundation of this cooling system. They were typically made from the same coral ragstone as the walls, or finished with a thick, smooth layer of lime plaster. Both materials have a high thermal mass. This is a crucial concept. It means they are very good at absorbing and storing heat energy. Think of it like a thermal battery. During the hot daytime, the cool floors would slowly absorb heat from the air and from any sunlight that entered the room. They acted like a heat sink, actively pulling warmth out of the living space and helping to moderate the indoor temperature. The process was slow and steady, preventing the room from overheating quickly. Then, during the cooler night, the process would reverse. The floors, having absorbed all that heat, would slowly release it back into the space, keeping the house from becoming too chilly overnight. The practical effect of this was a profound sense of comfort. To walk barefoot on a Swahili coral floor at noon, when the sun outside is at its most punishing, is a remarkable experience. You feel a distinct, soothing, solid coolness rising into the soles of your feet. It's a tangible connection to the building's cooling power, a constant, grounding reminder of how the house is working to protect you from the elements. It's important to understand that none of these elements worked in isolation. The genius of Swahili architecture lies in how all these components, the shaded baraza, the screened mashrabia windows, the cross-ventilating layout, the soaring high ceilings, and the cool, high-massed floors all worked in concert. They formed a cohesive, interconnected system. They were the geometry of coolness, a physical algorithm for comfort written in stone, wood, plaster, and space. This wasn't an architecture that relied on complex machinery or the consumption of fossil fuels. There were no air conditioners, no electric fans. This was an architecture that achieved thermal comfort through a deep, intuitive understanding of the natural world, an understanding honed over centuries of lived experience. It was a system that didn't fight against the climate, but instead danced with it. It created comfort not by consuming vast amounts of energy, but by wisely and elegantly spending the natural capital of wind, shade, and thermal dynamics. It was, and still is, a profoundly sustainable and intelligent way to live. Let's journey upwards, past the heavy carved doors, beyond the latticed masharabia screens, to the very crown of the Swahili house. Here, above our heads, is where the final, masterful act of wind engineering unfolds. While the walls and floors manage the airflow we feel on our skin. The roof deals with the winds, higher registers, its pressures, and its exhausts. This is the domain of the ceiling vent, the wind catcher. In the grandest Swahili houses, especially those of wealthy merchants in Lamu and Zanzibar, the roof wasn't just a simple barrier against the rain. It was a sophisticated, living lung. The most striking feature you'd notice looking up is the coffered or coved ceiling. Instead of being flat, the ceiling curves gracefully up into the roof space, often forming elegant, geometric patterns of squares and arches. This beautiful coving wasn't just for show. It created a hidden plenuma space above the living quarters where air could gather, move, and be managed. But the true genius, the secret to this ancient air conditioning, was in the vents. Strategically placed at the highest points of these coves, usually on the side of the house, facing away from the main sea breeze, were small, often exquisitely carved wooden or plaster grills. These were the exhaust valves of the entire system. So, how did it all work together? Imagine the system singing its song, the cool sea breeze, the cascade, enters through the main door and the intricate mashrabiyah screens. Driven by positive pressure, it flows through the rooms, picking up warmth from the day and humidity from the occupants. As this air warms up, basic physics takes over. It naturally rises. It ascends towards the high coved ceiling, collecting in that hidden plenum space we talked about. There, it encounters the ceiling vents. Remember, these vents are on the leeward side of the house, the side with lower air pressure. This pressure difference between the windy side pushing air in and the leeward side creating a vacuum generates a powerful and continuous pull. The warm, stale air is actively sucked out through these ceiling vents. This creates a constant, gentle suction that pulls even more cool, fresh air in through the front of the house. The effect is truly remarkable. It's a silent, constant river of air flowing through the entire building. The breeze you feel on your skin isn't just wind randomly wandering in. It's part of a meticulously designed cycle, being pulled through the house by the ceiling's gentle, persistent whisper. In some of the most sophisticated houses, the vents were even directional. They were carved into shapes that could catch the wind coming over the roof from the opposite direction during the Kusi monsoon, funneling it down into the plenum. This ensured the house remained ventilated and cool, no matter which way the seasonal winds blew. Let's just pause here for a moment and listen. Let's try to imagine the sound of such a house. It isn't silent. If you were to stand very still in the central courtyard during the peak of the monsoon, you might just hear it. A soft, low, harmonic hum. It's the sound of the wind being played by the architecture itself. It's the sound of air rushing over the roof, sighing through the carved vents, and humming through the lattice screens. It is the house breathing, a deep, slow, tidal breath that completely exchanges the interior air every few minutes, all without a single moving part, without consuming a single watt of electricity, powered only by the wind's own kinetic energy. This was air conditioning, perfected centuries before the invention of modern machinery. But it wasn't the aggressive, dry, mechanical chill we're used to today. It was a living, organic coolness. A partnership with the atmosphere. The whisper from the ceiling was the final, elegant verse in a poem of climatic harmony. It stands as a powerful testament that the greatest comfort isn't found in trying to dominate nature, but in listening to its rhythms and composing a space that lives in harmony within them.
Today, we step across the threshold of a finished masterpiece. Imagine with me, we are in the heart of Lamu. The year is circa 1800. Before us stands a 3-story merchant's coral house, a testament to prosperity and tradition. Its owner is Sharif Almai, a successful trader in ivory, mangrove poles and spices. This house is more than his home. It is his sanctuary, the living, breathing embodiment of all the principles we have witnessed. It is a world built of coral, lime, and tick, designed to master the climate and elevate the soul. So come with me. Let's leave our time behind and step into his. We find ourselves in a narrow, sun-baked alley. It's a corridor of blinding white lime wash, the walls reflecting the searing equatorial heat until it feels like a physical force. The heat is a weight on your shoulders, a pressure on your skin. The air itself shimmers and warps. Ahead, nestled within the glaring white wall, is a deep, shadowed recess. This is the Dhaka. At its heart is a large, imposing doorway. You approach it, seeking the promise of shade. As you draw closer, the sheer scale of the door becomes apparent. It's crafted from massive planks of teak, dark and rich, held together by rows of large, pointed brass studs that glitter faintly in the gloom. The wood is intricately carved with patterns that speak of distant lands, of trade routes stretching across the Indian Ocean. You reach out to touch the door, and the surface is hot, having absorbed the day's relentless sun. This door is not just an entrance, it is a statement. A statement of wealth, of security, of a world kept separate and protected. You take a breath of the hot, dusty air, wrap your hand around the heavy iron ring that serves as a handle, and you pull it. The door swings inward, groaning softly on its ancient hinges. And you step across. The transition is instantaneous, profound, almost disorienting. In a single step, the world changes completely. The blinding, painful light of the alley vanishes, replaced by a dim, greenish-gold gloom. The hammering, oppressive heat is gone, replaced by a profound coolness that wraps around you like a damp, silken sheet. It's a coolness that seems to emanate from the very stones themselves. And the noise, the constant bustling noise of the alley, the braying of donkeys, the shouts of children, the calls of traders is swallowed whole, utterly gone. In its place, a deep, resonant quiet descends, a silence so complete you can almost hear the blood rushing in your own ears. You have arrived. You are in the Dhaka, the entrance vestibule. Your eyes slowly begin to adjust to the dim light. As they do, the details of the space emerge from the shadows. The walls here are not plastered smooth like the exterior. They are the rugged, pitted surface of coral rag left exposed. You run your fingertips over the stone. It feels cool, slightly damp and textured. The wall seems to be breathing, exhaling a scent that is the very soul of this house. The smell of wet stone, the faint tang of salt from the sea, and beneath it all, the clean, almost spiritual perfume of sandalwood oil rubbed into ancient wood over generations. You take a deep breath, and the air itself tells a story. It's different from the air outside. It is heavy, cool, and carries a distinctive mineral tang, the breath of the coral itself. This is not the stale, trapped air of a sealed tomb. It is living air. You can feel a slow, almost imperceptible current moving from the deeper interior of the house out towards the bright slit of the doorway you just passed through. It's a gentle, constant exhalation. You realize in this moment that you have not just entered a house, you have entered a different climate, a different sense of time. The frantic, sun-drenched, chaotic pace of the Swahili port has been filtered out, left behind in the alley. Here, in the Dhaka, there is only calm, cool, patient shadow. This is a space designed for pause, for transition. This doorway, this vestibule, is more than an entrance. It's a cleansing airlock. It's a sensory decompression chamber. Its primary function is to prepare you, body and spirit, for the world within. It quite literally strips away the outer world's heat and noise, so that you can properly attune your senses to the house's true nature. The transition from the alley to the Dhaka tells you everything you need to know about the philosophy of this building. This is a place that masters its external environment, not by fighting it with thick, impenetrable walls, but by creating a counterworld of serene, managed sensation. The coolness isn't accidental, it's a product of genius design. The thick coral walls, with their high thermal mass, absorb the heat of the day on the outside, but remain cool on the inside. The deep recess of the Dhaka ensures the inner space is always in shadow. The strategic placement of openings creates a natural passive ventilation system, drawing cooler air from the shaded core of the house outwards, pushing the hot air away. Look up. High above, the ceiling is made of mangrove poles, laid side by side, their dark rounded forms creating a rhythmic pattern against the white lime plaster between them. This is the Buriti ceiling, a signature of Swahili architecture. It's both structural and decorative, a reminder of the vital mangrove forests that are the backbone of this coastal economy. And as your eyes become fully accustomed to the low light, you notice something else. Set into the thick walls are niches known as zdaka. They are elegantly shaped, multi-lobed arches, plastered and polished to a fine sheen. In another home, they might hold lamps or precious objects. Here, in the entrance, they are empty. Their purpose is not just for display, but to articulate the thickness of the walls, to break up the flat surfaces, and to catch the low light in a play of shadow and form. They add a layer of grace and sophistication to what is essentially a rugged, functional space. This Dhaka is a masterclass in psychological architecture. It forces you to slow down. It cleanses your palate, sensory and emotional. The harshness of the public, commercial world is shed at the door. By the time you are ready to move deeper into the home, you are already changed. You are calmer, more receptive, more attuned to the subtle beauty that awaits. This is the genius of the Swahili house. It doesn't just provide shelter, it curates experience. Every element, from the texture of the stone to the temperature of the air, is part of a carefully orchestrated journey. The house is an instrument, and its music is tranquility. We have only taken the first step, but already the house has begun to teach us its secrets. It has shown us that true luxury is not about ornamentation, but about control over one's environment. It's about the ability to create an oasis of cool, quiet serenity in the midst of a hot, chaotic world. Sharif Almai, the merchant, understood this well. His house was his greatest treasure, not for the goods stored within it, but for the quality of life it provided. And this is just the beginning. The Dhaka is the gatehouse. The deeper sanctuaries of the home, the private courtyards, and the hidden galleries still lie ahead. Each space will reveal another layer of this intricate world. So take one more moment here in the cool, silent dark. Feel the transition settle within you. Prepare yourself. The journey into the heart of the coral house has truly begun.
Led by a soft-footed servant, you leave the vestibule and step into the very heart of the house. The interior doesn't feel like a series of separate boxes, but rather a flowing sequence of experiences. Your sandals are left at the door, and the floor beneath your bare feet is smooth lime plaster, as cool as a river stone. This coolness seems to rise right through your soles, a grounding, deeply calming sensation that connects you to the earth itself. You reach out and run a hand along one of the walls. It isn't dry, it holds a gentle, consistent dampness. This isn't the unpleasant damp of decay you might find in a basement. It's the healthy, life-giving humidity of the coral reef from which the stone was born. If you were to wait until the deepest quiet of the night and press your ear against this wall, you might hear it, a faint, almost subliminal hum. This is the sound of the porous coral breathing. Microscopic currents of air are constantly moving through its intricate, labyrinthine structure, exchanging the air inside the house with the subtle pressure changes of the world outside. The walls aren't impenetrable barriers. They are living, permeable membranes. Light filters into the space in dappled, intricate patterns. Sifted through the beautifully carved wooden screens known as masharabia, it paints dancing geometries on the floors and walls, a constantly shifting artwork powered by the sun's slow journey across the sky. You notice there are no harsh, dark corners here. The light is soft, indirect, and incredibly kind to the eyes. It illuminates without overwhelming, creating an atmosphere of serene contemplation. The entire house feels like a carefully designed instrument for managing light and air. The servant guides you further, and you enter the central courtyard, the uwanja. Here, the sky is framed as a perfect, bright rectangle of blue far above. In the center grows a single frangipani tree, its sweet, tropical scent mingling with the clean, mineral air of the house. As you stand here, you feel a gentle, consistent breeze on your face. This is the famous Kaskazi wind, the northeast monsoon. But here it has been tamed and intelligently directed. It has entered through the front of the house, been cooled by the mass of the stone, and now swirls gently in this open heart, pulling air through all the surrounding rooms. You can see the genius of the design. The breeze enters the rooms that face the sea, sweeps through them, carrying away any accumulated heat, and is then drawn out into this central courtyard, creating a continuous silent river of air that ventilates the entire structure. It's a natural air conditioning system perfected over centuries. The house breathes with the wind, using its power to create a constant state of comfort. This isn't a static building. It's a dynamic system in harmony with its environment. Every sensory detail has been meticulously curated for comfort and calm. The acoustics, for instance, are soft and muted. Sounds are absorbed by the porous walls and the thick, woven rugs on the floor, creating a gentle hush that permeates the space. Loud noises are dampened, and conversations feel intimate and private. The color palette is drawn directly from nature. The brilliant white of the lime plaster, the pale, complex gray of the coral stone, the rich, dark brown of the carved wood, and the vibrant green of potted plants scattered throughout. There is no visual jarring, no sensory assault. The house is a balm for the senses. It's a living, breathing body that maintains its own steady pulse of coolness, moisture, and quiet movement. The air is always fresh. The temperature is always pleasant, and the light is always gentle. This isn't just a place to live. It's an environment designed to restore and rejuvenate the soul. It cradles its inhabitants, protecting them from the harshness of the outside world, while keeping them connected to the rhythms of nature. As you wander from room to room, you notice the subtle variations. Rooms facing the morning sun might have slightly smaller mashrabia openings, while those that catch the afternoon heat have thicker walls. Every element is a response to a specific environmental condition. The ceilings are high, allowing warm air to rise and escape, further contributing to the cooling effect. The doorways are tall and often arched, encouraging the flow of air and creating a sense of graceful transition from one space to the next. You might see small, carved niches in the walls, known as zaidaka. These aren't just for decoration. They were traditionally used to display treasured porcelain or other valuable items. Their intricate plasterwork adding another layer of texture and shadow to the walls. Even these small details contribute to the overall aesthetic of refined, understated elegance. The craftsmanship is evident everywhere, from the perfectly smooth plaster to the complex joinery of the wooden screens and doors. Generations of skill have been poured into this building. Let's pause again in the courtyard. Look up. The square of sky is not just a source of light. It's a clock and a calendar. You can track the time of day by the angle of the sun and the season by its position in the sky. At night, this same opening becomes a private observatory, a window onto the stars, free from the light pollution of a modern city. The frangipani tree is more than just a plant. It's a living part of the home's ecosystem, providing shade, scent, and a habitat for birds whose songs might occasionally drift through the quiet air. Now, think about the materials. The coral ragstone, harvested from the reef, is full of fossilized marine life. Running your hand over the wall, you are literally touching ancient history. The mangrove poles used for the ceilings are incredibly strong and resistant to insects. A local resource perfectly suited to the climate. The lime plaster is naturally antibacterial and helps regulate humidity. Every material tells a story of place, of a deep understanding of the local environment and how to build in harmony with it. This house is a powerful lesson in sustainable design. It achieves a remarkable level of comfort without using a single watt of electricity for air conditioning. It relies on passive strategies, thermal mass, natural ventilation, and careful orientation. It's a testament to the idea that the most intelligent design is often the one that works with nature, not against it. In a world increasingly concerned with energy consumption and climate change, these ancient techniques feel more relevant than ever. As you prepare to leave, you take one last look round. The light is beginning to fade, and the patterns from the mashrabia screens are stretching long across the floor. The air remains cool and fresh, the scent of frangipani still hanging delicately. The house seems to sigh, settling into the evening. You feel a sense of profound peace, a quietening of the mind that is all too rare in the modern world. You've experienced something more than just architecture. You've experienced a philosophy of living, one that prioritizes tranquility, connection to nature, and sensory well-being. The Lamu stone house is not just a shelter. It is a sanctuary. It's a living poem written in stone, wood, and light. As the equatorial sun finally plunges into the sea, the house we've been exploring undergoes its final, most beautiful transformation of the day. A servant moves gracefully through the rooms, lighting small clay lamps filled with fragrant coconut oil. He places them one by one into the niches carved into the coral walls. And as the flames flicker to life, something truly extraordinary happens. The light doesn't just illuminate the walls. It seems to come from within them. The rough, porous surface of the coral rag catches the warm light in a million tiny, sparkling facets. The crushed seashells embedded in the mortar between the blocks begin to twinkle faintly, like a constellation brought down to earth. The entire interior transforms into a warm, cavernous, yet intimate space. It feels like we are inside a colossal, beiged seashell, lit softly from within its very core. The family of Sharif Almai begins to gather in the main reception room, the Madaka. You can feel a palpable shift in the air. The incredible coolness that the thick walls and floors have been patiently absorbing all day now radiates gently back into the room. Even as the outside air remains warm and humid, here it is blissfully comfortable. There is no need for electric fans, no artificial hum to disturb the peace. High above, almost lost in the shadows, The ceiling vents continue their silent, tireless work. They draw the thin wisps of smoke from the oil lamps upwards and away, ensuring the air remains fresh and clear, carrying away any stuffiness before it can even begin to form. You're invited to join them. You take a seat on the floor, which is covered with layers of lush, hand-woven Persian carpets. Their intricate patterns and rich colors seem to glow in the lamplight. You lean back against large, firm bolster cushions, feeling the day's fatigue melt away. A light evening meal is served, a testament to the island's bounty. There's fresh fish, grilled and dressed with a delicate coconut sauce. Beside it, a mound of spiced rice, fragrant with cardamom and clove, and a platter of sliced, perfectly ripe mangoes, their sweetness a perfect counterpoint to the savory dishes. The food itself seems to taste different here, clearer, more distinct. The scents are pure, untainted by the oppressive heat or stagnation that can dull the palate. Everything is crisp and vibrant. The conversation around you is soft, mirroring the gentle atmosphere of the room. Voices are mellow, their tones softened and enriched by the unique acoustics of the space. The coral walls, with their uneven surfaces, absorb and diffuse sound, preventing any harsh echoes. A child's quiet laugh drifts across the room, a sweet, silvery sound that echoes sweetly but doesn't ring or feel intrusive. It's a space designed for human connection, where every element conspires to create a feeling of serene intimacy. This, right here, is the ultimate purpose of all that intelligent, painstaking architecture. The goal was never to create a sterile museum piece or an imposing monument. It was to nurture life itself. This house is a sanctuary, a carefully calibrated filter that transforms the harshness of the tropical climate into pure, unadulterated comfort. It's a place where the body is not constantly taxed by heat, where you aren't waging a subconscious, draining battle against the environment. And when the body is at ease, the mind is freed. It's liberated from that primal, exhausting struggle for physical comfort. Here, in this cool, whispering, beautifully proportioned space, the merchant's family can truly connect with one another. They can rest, they can think, they can dream. The house doesn't just shelter them, it actively facilitates the highest human activities by perfectly, almost invisibly, managing the most basic of physical needs. It is the silent, supportive partner in their daily lives. Later in the evening, imagine stepping out onto the rooftop terrace. The contrast is stunning, almost breathtaking. You walk out from the cool interior into the night air, and it feels like stepping into a warm, velvety blanket. The air is still heavy with tropical humidity, thick with the scent of night-blooming flowers and the salt of the Indian Ocean. Above, a sky undimmed by city lights is crowded with a brilliant blanket of stars. You can feel the vastness of the world out here. But then, you turn and descend back into the house. The experience is like diving into a cool, clear spring on a scorching day. The transition is instantaneous and profound. You are immediately enveloped once more in the protective embrace of the house's own microclimate. This building hasn't just been built. It has actively created and now diligently protects its own internal world. It stands as a powerful testament to a different kind of wealth, a different definition of luxury. True luxury, this house seems to say, is not about gold leaf or flashy ostentation. It is about profound, sensory well-being. It is the simple, priceless luxury of a cool cheek on a hot night. It is the luxury of genuine quiet in a world filled with noise. It is the luxury of breathing air that tastes clean, of the sea and of ancient stone. It is the luxury of living within walls that seem to sing a barely audible, eternal duet with the wind. Let's just pause for a moment to absorb the fullness of this achievement. Think about every element we've discussed. all working in seamless, silent unity. The moon harvested coral, chosen for its porosity, the breathing mortar, designed to wick away moisture, the wind-scooping geometry of the building, a masterclass in passive ventilation, the thick, porous walls acting as thermal batteries. Nothing is superfluous. Nothing is for show. It is a completely integrated system. This is architecture as a living ecosystem. The house as a living partner to its inhabitants. The brilliant coral architects of Lamu built for a different audience. They were unconcerned with the passing eyes of strangers or with making a grand statement to the outside world. They built for the skin, for the lungs, and for the soul of the people who would live within these walls. Their legacy isn't just a collection of beautiful buildings, it is a philosophy written in stone and air. It is a perfect, silent harmony between a human dwelling and the natural world. A harmony that has endured for centuries, whispering its secrets to anyone willing to stop and listen. The lamps in the coral house have been extinguished. The family sleeps, cradled in a coolness that seems to rise from the very stone itself. Out in the alley, the Indian Ocean continues its ancient, rhythmic sigh against the shore. The story of the coral architects is complete, but their whisper lingers in the salt-scented air. A testament to a wisdom that feels both ancient and urgently modern. We began our journey under the moon, watching men with simple wooden tools work in harmony with the tides, borrowing stone from the sea. We stood beside the kilns, feeling the intense heat that transformed coral into the fine, white lime for a mortar that breathes. We traced the ingenious geometry of walls and courtyards, learning how they turn the relentless wind into a willing servant of comfort. And then we finally stepped across a threshold, into a world of serene, intelligent coolness, a world built not in defiance of nature, but in profound, intimate conversation with it. The true obsession of these builders was not with grandeur, but with response. This is the key, the secret ingredient in their enduring magic. They responded to the moon's pull on the tides with precise timing for their quarrying. They responded to the sea's gift of stone with respectful, sustainable techniques. They responded to the wind's invisible path with brilliant, strategic channeling. They responded to the sun's fierce heat with the deep shade of courtyards, the thermal mass of thick walls, and the constant airflow of intricate ventilation. In every single decision, they listened first. Only then did they build. This legacy is not some relic, frozen in the amber of the past. It stands today, alive and breathing, in the quiet, narrow alleys of Lamu, Zanzibar, and Kip. These coral houses, many of them centuries old, still perform their silent magic every single day. They require no electricity to be cool. They need no complex mechanical systems to breathe. They are sustainable not by some modern green building decree, but by an ancient, deeply embedded wisdom. They teach us a powerful lesson, that true resilience isn't about being harder or stronger than the environment, but about being more adaptable, more attentive, and infinitely more clever. The coral architects understood something that our modern world is struggling, often clumsily, to relearn, that human habitation doesn't have to be a scar on the landscape. It can be a gentle, even enhancing presence. They knew that a house can be so much more than a mere shelter. It can be a living partner to its place on earth, borrowing wisely from its surroundings, and giving back in the form of comfort, beauty, and enduring harmony. Their work is a poem written in stone and lime, its verses composed in the language of tidal rhythms and monsoon breaths, a language we can still learn to read if we just pay attention. So, as we leave the Swahili coast and its whispering houses, I hope you carry this one thought with you. The greatest comfort, the most enduring sense of peace, often comes not from conquering the world around us, from bending it to our will with brute force and technology. It comes from learning its language, understanding its flows, and building our lives within its graceful, intelligent patterns. It's about finding our place within the system, not imposing a new one upon it. Look around, under the vast, indifferent sky, and by the edge of the endless, timeless sea. The coral houses still stand, and they still breathe. A silent, powerful reminder that there is another way to live, a quieter, more thoughtful path forward. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If you've been inspired by these stories, please consider subscribing to see where we travel next. Until then, remember to look for the wisdom hidden in the world around you. You are now under baobab skies.